and I'm just pulling it a little bit. And because I've got blue over here, I love putting in the same color in multiple places throughout an art piece. It's a design rule. Put it in either 3 places or 5 places if you can.
Welcome to Mastrius and today's Meet the Mentor session. My name is Louisa Mandler-Johnson, and I'm a navigator at Mastrius and also the navigator for Sally's group, which will start next week on Tuesday, January 16th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, which is Wednesday, January 17th at 10 a.m. Australian time. There are still a few spots left, so it's not too late to register. I posted the link to Sally's Mastrius page in the chat. This is where you can find out a bit more about her mentorship and also do registration. If you're new to Mastrius, you may wonder what makes it different from other online classes. It is more than a workshop. It's an ongoing mentorship with a supportive small group environment. There's a maximum of 8 participants in each group. It is a curated, personalized learning experience tailored to the participants' needs and directed by what they decide they want to learn next. Mentors are generous about sharing their knowledge and eager to give you the tools to develop your own style. In Mastrius, you will also find a welcoming community of kindred spirits and a safe place to grow as an artist. Each group has a navigator, facilitator such as myself. We are also students and learning alongside everyone else in the group. But we also serve as a guide to information about Mastrius, as a moderator or time manager in our monthly meetings with the mentor. We also lead our mid-month meetings with the group members where we discuss how things are going for us, where we want to go next with our learning experience, or what should be tweaked possibly. The navigator relays this information to the mentor to make sure we're all on the same page. And we also celebrate our successes, share frustrations, and find out what's new. There's a wealth of information about everything Mastrius on the mastrius.com website. If you have a specific question, don't hesitate to use the chat bot that pops up, and somebody will get back to you in short time. Before we want to introduce Sally, just a couple of housekeeping things. Feel free to speak up to ask questions during the presentation or post them in the chat if you prefer. And please be aware that this event will be recorded and posted on the Mastrius YouTube channel. So if you don't want to appear on video, feel free to turn off your camera. And now on to meeting Sally. Sally joins us today from Sydney, Australia, where she has an art studio in her home with a lovely name of Treetop. That sounds so enchanting.
It is. My trees are all out in front of me.
And she has a wonderful website with a wealth of information about everything she's up to, and it's also posted in the chat. And it's quite a variety of ventures, so I highly recommend you check it out. I was checking it in preparation to find some background information about her, but after meeting her a couple of times online, I'm convinced she can do a much better job of telling you about herself. A wonderful storyteller. So Sally, can you tell us a bit about your artistic journey, including, of course, how you came by the name of Sillier Than Sally? I'm sure everyone wants to know that. And you also gave us a teaser in your promo for this event about a funny anecdote you have for how you started with watercolors.
Yeah, there's a lot of journey information there. I think as we all do, we all have most of us have a long journey to get to doing art a lot in our lives. And mine's no different, really. I like to say that I was born with a paintbrush, but no, that would have been pretty painful for my mum. But I have been creating since I was a kid. But of course, as with all life journeys, it's a lot like this. I didn't go to art college. I didn't go to university for it. I went to work after high school. I traveled a lot. It's the best thing in the world, I think, for gathering inspiration. Did like a year or so overseas every now and then, went to America a lot, Canada a lot. I've worked in America quite a bit. But this was all in hospitality, like events and then graphic design and things like that. Things that were fun, vivacious, but kind of like on the outskirts of the art world, because it's kind of hard to think that the mindset that we have, I think, is that it's hard to feel like we're allowed in there or we belong or it's for us. It's kind of like it starts with dabbling basically, and then you just like merge a little bit further in and a bit further in and a bit further in, or barge your way in like I have. And then I think it became a time for me where I was juggling so much. I was juggling full-time work as, so I worked at Disney in animation, and then I'd work in graphic design and advertising. I'd be traveling a lot as well, but I wasn't doing enough art. Or I didn't have enough time to do full-time art as well. So I made the switch. And that was probably about 11 or 12 years ago now. I told my husband I was going to quit my full-time job in advertising, and I was going to go out and get a design job like with freelancing. And I actually just lied directly to his face. I quit and just started up Sillier Than Sally. And I did get on some like design clients and stuff like that, but it was mainly to go further into art, because not having enough art in my life, I don't know, I felt heavy. I felt like there was something inside me that was trapped and needed to continually get out more. I wanted to delve into it more. And sometimes when you open that door fully and step into it, the jobs come, the opportunities come more. When you're in like so many different worlds, it's hard to fully invest in something. So I invested in it completely by just throwing myself all in. And it's been pretty crazy since. It's been very colorful. It's been lovely. It's been hard. I'm predominantly a watercolor artist now, but I was in acrylics for a long time. And I hated watercolors when I first tried them, I think when I was 16 years old. This is the funny anecdote, actually. So you'll like this, Louise. I tried them when I was 16 years old, and I hated them. I thought they were the most shittest medium I'd ever used in my life. They're tricky, they're hard, and they're annoying at first. And I was like, this is ridiculous. They took so long to dry. And then every time I went to paint over them, I would ruin my watercolor paintings because I was not letting them dry properly because I was impatient. So I walked away from them and didn't use them again until I was about 35 years old. And the only reason why I used them when I was about 35, so I've only been painting with watercolors for 8-9 years now. Most people think I've been painting with watercolors forever. I had a little baby boy, my first boy. He's 9 now. And I'd put him up to sleep. I'd creep out of the room like mums do when you got a newborn baby. I'd come down. I'd put out my tubes of watercolor paint, not watercolor paint, sorry, acrylic paint. I would set it all up. It would take about 20 minutes, right? 30 minutes, set it all up. I'd paint like 2 strokes and my baby would start crying. And I'm like screaming his head off like he knew. I'd run all the way back upstairs. I'd give him a feed or calm him down, put him back down to sleep, creep back out. I'd come back down and all my squeezed out tubes were dry. Mm-hmm. And this happened for weeks and weeks and weeks and months. And I was going mental. I was like, God, my baby's selfish. I thought, it's not really a nice way to be a mum, but it was the funniest thing. I couldn't actually get anything done because I was always setting up my tubes of paint. And I had a girlfriend who wanted a watercolor. So I was doing, again, freelancing as well. I had a girlfriend who wanted a watercolor logo, a really beautiful one of a girl's face. So I pulled out my watercolors. They were old and I'd had them there for ages. And I just gave it a go. And it turned out lovely. Not great, but lovely. And I thought, well, watercolors, as we know, can sit there and they go dry. They just like completely dry up. So I can walk away from these. I can paint a little bit, walk away and come back, and it's just sitting there ready to go. So I don't know what happened, but the switch kind of just became so immersive and beautiful and slotted in with my life. And I could do it for 5 minutes rather than having to sit down and paint for an hour, which is a busy mum. You don't get that time to do all the time. And there was something beautiful about it. But again, I struggled to learn how to paint with watercolors because the way everyone else I was seeing online and YouTube or anything was painting very classical and really beautiful slow washes, and they would take like a week to do a painting. and layer everything on top of each other. I was like, I don't have time for that. It's just, one, for me, it was too boring. Two, it was taking me too long to get through paintings. And again, I would just lose attention. So I started doing my own like 30-day painting programs online, and I'd paint and post in the morning, and it just made me paint and paint and paint and make lots of mistakes and lots of errors, but also then incorporate them into my artwork and kind of come together an artwork that had my own essence and life and energy in it, and a fun way to paint, a creative way to paint, and one that I enjoyed rather than trying to get it perfect. Like there was no perfection in it, which allowed me to enjoy the process as well. And also go up and go off and do stuff and come back and then pick up where I left off. So yeah, it's worked beautifully into my life. But I do know that the journey of creating watercolors is tricky at the beginning. It really, really is. And a lot of people give up. Like I did when I was 16. I totally gave up. So yeah, that's how I got into watercolors.
Well, there's so many different styles in watercolor too, right? So you
There
can have a
is.
really tight, realistic style and then the more loose style that you have. So what is your
Yeah.
typical creative process and the technique you use when you're working with watercolor?
So for me, I love to do a good sketch first. So I kind of like the idea of getting a proper representation of what I want to create into onto decent watercolor paper. I always think pay a little bit more for your watercolor paper and your watercolor paints. It helps you just create something that you're more happy with in the end, and you don't hit so many blocks and frustrations that are out of your control. Sketch work for me is the big thing. I know a lot of people think I don't really do much sketch, but I actually spend a long time looking at what I want to paint, create, get the right character to it, the right fluffiness levels if I'm painting birds and stuff like that. I think there's a beautiful way to kind of train yourself a little bit to take in a bit more information about what you see in your surroundings. And it's also a great way to get inspiration, and then to draw from there. When I'm painting as well, and I'll show you a quick demo in a little bit, it's, for me, I only do usually around 3 layers of paint, and I never really try to keep going over on top of my previous layers because I find it kind of dulls it a little bit. And I like that energy and that whiteness to come through. So I kind of teach in a style that allows light to come through your page, to remember to leave some white space, because it's like it softens the journey of the art piece and lets you go around if you haven't overloaded your art piece too much. And as you can see from my studio, I'm a maximalist. So it took me ages to train myself to actually leave white space and to not paint backgrounds and paint more. Like I have actually sat on my own hands at times and walked away from my painting so I wouldn't ruin it, because I've ruined loads of paintings. So yeah, there's some tips and tricks that I love to even teach myself and help other people learn about not overworking your art piece. Some tips about knowing when to stop. And I put that all into my kind of creative flow every day, because I try and paint every day, or I'm usually working on my business, or I am mumming like a crazy person. So yeah, that's my process.
You usually start with a sketch, or do you sometimes start with color, or
Sometimes I start with my I've got some sketchbooks over there. I fill up sketchbooks. And if you fill up a sketchbook, it allows you to get loose and free rather than using your really expensive watercolor paper to start with, because it's all art supplies are really expensive. So keep that for when you've got your sketch and you're happy with it and you can transfer that energy to your watercolor paper. I do loads of like thumbnail sketches. Then I'll do my sketch on watercolor paper, then I'll tape it down and I'll start from big to small. I'll try not to start with small things like the eyes or things like that. I'll start with, say, if I'm doing a bird, it'll be the head and the background and the fluffiness. And then as I'm going, I'll get into more detail. But if you start big with a big brush that's usually bigger than you even think you need, it stops you from getting too much control and it stops you from getting too tight. All those little things kind of help you loosen up. And my artwork, if you have a look back through it or anything, it's quite loose. And I like being able to capture that energy or that essence of whatever it is I'm painting. So, and as I'm going towards the end, of course, I let it dry. I do speed dry my artwork with like craft gun, just so that I don't paint over it while it's still damp. After that, I go to a stage where I do minimum layers on top and build it up a little bit. And towards the end, I even use things like black pen, or you can even cheat. And if you have, I'll show you, if you have lost a section, like if you've used too much white space, you can always bring it back with things like this and add a bit of mixed media in if you want to. So my style of watercolors and of teaching watercolors is not necessarily like traditional. It has a lot of modern mixed media elements that we can throw in and have a bit of fun with as well. Yeah.
Do you start with a pencil drawing, or?
Yeah. Yep. Full on sketch work. I usually use a pacer, but people use a lot of just your normal pencil. I then have a kneadable eraser as well, which is great. They're fun. They look like a bit of like grey poop. But if you're ever using watercolors, grab one of these. These are really, really good. It's not grey poo, I swear. And it's really good for just rolling along your page. I'll show you in the demo in a second, after you've used your pencil, because you want to keep your pencil work light. And you roll it along your page, and it really picks up all that lead work. And it still gives you the line that you've got there without so much lead work coming through your watercolors, because your watercolors are transparent. So unless you like that sketchy look underneath, you can always pick up the pencil marks with this before you start your watercolor painting. And honestly, this will change your watercolor journey. They're fantastic. They're like $3 from your local art shop. They're really, really good.
Does anybody in the audience have questions?
Oh yeah, about the process?
Feel free to speak up.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions along the way, just yell them at me. I'm totally fine with that.
Do you want to give us an idea of the topics or techniques that you plan to cover in the upcoming class, for those that want to?
Yeah, so I do a lot of online classes and I do in-person classes. And with Mastrius, what I liked about Mastrius is that it's a lot more feedback, and it's a lot more one-on-one, and I can see the journey of people growing and developing. And I know that quite a few of you have done, I know, of course, Louise, you've done Mastrius before, and you've been involved in some groups, and it's beautiful seeing the actual, the journey and the watercolors coming to life, people getting more confident about their artwork and confident about themselves and sharing it. That's really, really cool. And being able to help with the tweaks. So that's kind of why I like Mastrius. When I've taught Mastrius last year, I did a class with Mastrius and it was awesome. The women were amazing. And we do start with the basics, only because everyone's at a different level of where they're at with watercolors or with different artistic mediums that they've used. We start with, I'm going to grab some swatches. I'm back. My camera went rogue for a second. So, and I know this sounds crazy, but I love even just sitting there and just doing simple things like swatching. I don't know if you guys have used much watercolors yet, but it's such a beautiful meditative medium. And I don't know about you, but my life is so crazy and busy that when I sit down and do watercolors, it does actually, it helps a lot. Depending on if I've got too much on, then you know, you can get a bit overwhelmed, which I've actually had a little bit lately, and I'm working through that. But I think when we start with the basics and build from there, it builds a solid foundation to go forward from. And then you can build on that easier. So even with things with drawing, we cover techniques like paintbrush use, what paintbrushes to use, how to use your mediums, your watercolors, what type to try and go for if you want to get a watercolor set. We also go through brush work, things like the, as you saw before with the kneadable eraser, how to use that properly. And that's the real basic stuff at the beginning. And then we start building on top of that with, we also check in and see where everyone's at. So we can move along faster or a bit slower depending where people are at. You can also redo the class during the month if you want to do the class again and do it in a separate kind of like do that image itself and do it again in a separate color form. And then we go through all the stuff at the end of the month and check in with homework, and we talk about tweaks and things that we loved. and then we look at what we're going to do next week as well. And usually we try and go along as fast as possible, as fast as the group can take, so that your artistic journey is big rather than it being in lumps and small parts, which I see with in-person classes now and then, and even online where there's no feedback and growing together. For the actual artwork that we do, we try and cover bird life. We try and cover nature life, especially with nature and outdoors. We work with light, and light can sometimes be tricky to get naturally into your artwork, especially if you overwork things. We also cover animals, which is really, really cool. I think I've got some here from my last one, actually. I don't know if anyone's here from my last Mastrius live, but we did this one, which was really, really cool. I think my screen might be a bit bright.
No, we can see it. Yeah.
You can see it.
Lots
So
of
we
white
did this
left
one. Yeah, we did this one live, and it's a lot to fit in the classes. Like, we fit a lot in, and they're intense, but the good thing is that they're taped so that you can rewatch them. If anyone wants to, they can always rewatch them. Some people just sit and we chat and we paint, and some people paint away as I'm talking as well. So it's each to their own. We kind of go where the class wants to go. So if people are more into portraits, we can do. I just did this one while I was traveling. So we can even talk about travel kits and all that sort of stuff, and how to set up an awesome travel kit for yourself if that's what you're into, because I love traveling, though I haven't been much lately because I've got young kids. We can do more creative kind of like stuff. I do a lot of art licensing, so we can do some more creative stuff like that, where you get some cutesy stuff in. And
can
I'll
people
show you art
create their
licensing.
own images as well for the homework?
Yeah. So we have lots of homework. And I know that sounds terrible. I hate saying homework. More
It's
like home projects. We have home projects, because I know, and I'm assuming Louise, you felt the same, as that the more you create and the more you paint, that it's progress. So by doing the art during the month, and by continuing to dabble, even if it's only a few minutes every few days, that's fine. But if the more you can do, the faster your kind of like growth is, and you'll see more progress in your work visually over time. I've always kind of felt that, but I think that's what I like about watercolors, again, is that you can just do a few minutes a day if that's what fits into your life, rather than having to and I do show as well, I go through as well how to set up your space to make it easy for you if you want to just do quick little dabbles of artwork. Or some people have the time to do lots of artwork, which is great, because again, their growth is probably a little bit quicker, because they're just spending more time creating artwork. But like, this is like art licensing type projects and that. So this is like a diary, things like that. So it's really cool to see your artwork come to life on products.
That'll be really interesting to find out how you got into that whole business, actually.
Yeah, that's a big one. And again, the art licensing, or anything that uses art on products, is kind of art licensing. And there's so many different markets within it. So there's different styles, and then you find what works for you, and you try and get your foot in the door and dabble and build up a portfolio and stuff like that. But again, you just create lots of work. And also through that creation of lots of work, and we do go through this, we spent quite a bit of time on this one in my last Mastrius class with the ladies, is the idea of finding your voice, or letting your voice out with your artwork, because I know that that's a struggle for a lot of people, and I even struggled with it for so long, thinking that, I didn't have a style. And we go through the process of letting that out a little bit more. And I think the biggest tip with that one, I'll just even say now, is that our style is already inside us, and it's more about letting it out, letting it flow through you and out, and going down the path of things that you love and appreciate, and painting those, shining a light on those things. And you'll be surprised at how when you get to that place where you feel like you found your style, that it's been in you the whole time. But we do cover that a lot in depth. It's a pretty big class, like part of the class, because it's just about probably going deep and then finding tips and tricks to help bring all that stuff out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always think it's like, how our handwriting is different for everyone.
Yeah.
With art, it's a matter of really practicing the different mediums and becoming familiar with what they do and the brushes and the water and everything. And once you've mastered that, your style comes out because it's there.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like there's a long hallway, but it's your hallway. And then at the end, the door opens and it's amazing. It feels so elusive and it feels heavy not having this style and not being happy with your style. And you look at other people's artworks and you judge yourself and you want that person's handwriting, but yours is different. But yeah, I don't know. There is a space there in your art journey where once you've asked yourself those questions, gone through that little bit of a journey, creating a lot of art, and as you said, Louise, in a lot of different mediums, because the idea of what you want to create as an artist might actually be different than what your body and your brain is trying to get out as well. And I know that sounds hooey, but it's part of the journey as well. And when we're always trying to create what someone else is doing, sometimes even that hampers our journey a little bit. And honestly, the way I teach as well is it's not creating the exact art that I've created. It's creating your art, your version of whatever's inspired you. And so when you create your art piece, it's actually not going to look the exact same as my art piece, and it shouldn't, because it's a part of you. It's a version of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that journey is really, really beautiful. We might be all painting the same flower, and everyone in the groups turns out so different and so unique. Their color schemes, the way their hand moves, the heaviness or the lightness. It's actually really, really cool. Yeah.
What's great about art.
I love it. I do. I really enjoy watching people like grow and art become more of their lives, because I think a lot of the time we feel it because we're not a professional artist that art's not for us, and I really think art's for everybody, and I think it's beautiful. So yeah, I love to see it growing more in people.
That's great.
Yeah.
Did you want to do a demo and let us have a look?
Should we do a demo?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I've got to get all this stuff off my desk. So what I was thinking today is, has everyone here dabbled in watercolors before a little bit? Yeah.
My forte.
Yeah. You have? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have this funny technique that I have named, it's such a sexy name, called the plop and pull. And is that can you see my little puppy in the background?
Yeah.
Isn't she gorgeous? I want to eat her face. She's so beautiful. Usually she's trying to eat the floor when I'm chatting to someone online. So she's doing really well today. So what I was thinking is we'll go through the basic, quick little technique of the plop and pull, but you'll be surprised at how you can use it in different ways. I'm just sorting out everything on my desk. I'm going to get some of my paint brushes together. I'll show you the paint brushes that I mainly use. I only use about 3 paint brushes. So I feel like a makeup artist. A tutorial. So the good thing about watercolors is, even though I have 3,000 paintbrushes, I actually only needed 3, and I never knew that. So as you can see, if you have a look around my studio, I've got way too many paintbrushes. If you buy a thin, like a long rigger, a medium, it's actually kind of a small, and then you're thick, like a size 12. If you want to go really big, you buy a bigger, kind of like bigger version of this, and that's all you need with watercolors. Or if you really like getting a lot of detail, a lot of the time you can just grab a paintbrush like this, which has the point, and you can use 1 or 2 paintbrushes to do most of your artwork. Like you can do flowers, you can do leaves, you can get so much detail in because it has the thickness, but also has the thinness. My paintbrush is like really old and dodgy, and it's really rounded. But it gives me really great blotchy work, and I like that in my work. It kind of just came about because I bought like a secondhand paintbrush and it happened to be round, and that's the type of things that helps you connect to your style, is that the serendipitous of like things that come into your life where you live. Like you're up in Queensland, you're in Canada in the freezing cold, our Christmases are different. So when you're painting Christmas stuff, we'll be painting a kangaroo with a head reef, right? But you'll be probably painting like a bear with a head reef for Christmas, or you'll be painting the red bobbins, whereas we don't get the red bobbins down here. So again, that's the little things that come into your style and help you create a body of work that kind of sings in your voice. Anyway, I'll shut up and I'll do a little bit of a demo. I'm going to bring you down here. I've got a fancy new camera and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do.
Enjoying the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when new Mastrius videos are added.
Look at that. There we go. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm just going to bring in my supplies so you can see them. And I'm going to move this. Okay. So here we have, I use a variety of watercolors. And the reason why this is a variety and I've made up my own tray is because I've been collecting watercolors since I was a kid. Not since I was a kid, for a long time now though. And I found different ones that work from different companies. So you don't have to stick with a particular company and you don't have to buy all new art supplies because they get really expensive. I've spent way too much money on art supplies throughout my life. So I try and encourage people to only get what they need and they can always add to that later. Don't do a Sally and spend too much money on art supplies.
Too late.
I could have bought a couple of cars over with the art supplies that I have. So it's nice to have some money in your bank account too now and then, rather than just going to the art supply shop all the time. What I was thinking that we would do is, this is some work that I created a little while ago for an art licensing project. It's going to be coming out. Some of these elements are going to be coming out in some kids' onesies and stuff, which I think is really, really cool. And I didn't end up using this, but I'll use this again in another class. Sorry, I think for another art licensing job. It was these kind of diamonds that I'd painted, and it was actually really nice to do the plop and pull kind of like demo with this. So I thought we could do some of that, and then if we have time, we can even move into doing something like feathers, and I can really show you how to get that balance between the watercolors, the water, and your own brushwork and things like that, like putting your pizzazz in. So what I'm going to do is put this over here so you guys can still see it. And you can use tools like rulers if you need to, if you want to get straight lines, if they do your head in. I usually just sketch stuff out, but you can also use even things like if you're doing a reef or anything like that, you can always use something to do your round circles with if you feel the need to, because everyone's a little bit different on what they find easy or hard. Okay, I've also got some kitchen towel. There we go. And I've got my, can you kind of see my water there? Not really. I'm going to bring it over here. There we go. I have two water containers here. One is I call it my innie and my outie. One's the dirty water and then one's the clean water. It's great to have two. And if you want to leave your water out on your desk and you don't want to like be, so I have young kids, so I used to have to pour my water out all the time. But I just got two jam jars and put lids on it actually, and could keep it there so I could sit down and paint straight away rather than fussing around with the setup. So what I'm going to do quickly is this. I usually take my paper down too, which I'll do. I won't skip that spot. Here we go. I'm going to quickly tape it down. Because as we all know, watercolor paper buckles really hardcore. So taping it down just stops it from buckling too much.
And do you usually use 140 weight, or what kind of weight paper?
I use 300 GSM. So what does that equate to? I think
it will be the same.
Be the same. There you go. I say go the thickest you can.
Yeah.
I use Arches, but Fabriano, Bristol, there's a lot of really good watercolor brands out there. But I'm just going to turn up my light here as well. There we go. There's a lot of great brands out there, but I love Arches. I think it's the most beautiful paper out there. And I use like a medium grade tooth, so a rough, and I always use cold pressed because cold press has the texture to it, whereas hot press is the smooth paper. I always remember it like as if it's been heated and it's been melted, because it's really hard to remember what's hot press and what's cold press. But cold press is the one that has the rough tooth to it, and then it kind of, again, stops my artwork from turning out perfect, which I don't want it turning out perfect, because that's it's too hard to keep up having that level of perfectionist. And I drop my paintbrush on my bloody palette all the time. I drop my paintbrush on my painting. So if I go for perfect, I never get a painting finished. So I'm all about embracing the imperfect mistakes. I've just got a pasty here, and I'm going to kind of do some simple. I'm going to go a bit harder so you can see, but usually I keep my line work quite light. Simple kind of diamond shapes. Again, you can use a ruler if you like. And I'm just having fun creating some triangles. But it's actually really fun to warm up with something like this. It's similar to warming up with something like this. Or in my classes, I teach it like doing a basic shape like a love heart or a star or something like that, where we're just actually learning the technique of the plop and pull before we're worrying about doing a full painting. Because it takes a while playing around with watercolors to become comfortable with them, to get over that stage of them being like harder to use and a little bit annoying.
So Sally, as far as new students, you're totally okay with beginners as well as with a little more experience? Yeah.
And I find as well people that have not created with watercolors before are can have a quite a fast learning curve, because they're ready to rock and roll. They're ready to learn and absorb so much. When we've come in with heavy acrylic base or anything like that, sometimes it can be trickier because you don't have to unlearn, but you have to learn to paint a slightly different way. So beginners are totally fine, and they can have a really big and quick learning curve, which is pretty awesome. But then again, when you've got some background with watercolors as well, you're already familiar with them, you know the medium and how it works. And again, once you loosen up, learn to trust yourself and the watercolors, your watercolor journey can speed up quite a bit, which is really cool. So I'm just getting in some spots that I can then put some extra. You can all see that okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. It's quite clear.
And you can kind of paint anything. You know, you can get like beautiful amethysts and stuff like that. So you don't actually have to do this if you don't want to. You can paint something that's a little bit more a natural crystal. But it's a really cool way to just get loose, have a bit of fun. Okay, so I'll just do these three for the moment. And I'm going to show you my plop and pull. So that's my watercolor technique that I teach. And I love calling it the plop and pull, one, because it's funny and it's a bit cheeky, but also because it's kind of easy to remember. And by remembering to plop it down and then pull it with a damp, clean brush, you can kind of reset yourself if you feel like you're overworking your artwork, or if you feel like you're not getting the balance properly with too much pigment, or you're pulling your pigment too much, you can remember to go back to the plop and pull and give it another go. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to grab, say, some yellow. I'm going to do this with a few different colors, but you can start with one color for something like this. And if you've used watercolors a lot, you might be happy to go straight into lots of colors, or you might just want to start off with like doing it in one color. I'm going to quickly show you what I mean with the kneadable eraser. So you can use a kneadable eraser like this, or you can actually get it and just roll it over your artwork and pull up some of that pencil work. See how much that changes that so straight away? And you haven't actually ruined your watercolor paper, which is really, really cool. Because watercolor paper can get ruined pretty quickly. Okay, so I'm going to plop it down with a thin brush like this. I'm not covering it all. And I've got my innie water. And I've got the wrong brush, so I'm going to go and change that for another one. Where did I put it? I also hide stuff on myself all the time. Here we go. Here's my brush. Does anyone else do that? Put something in a safe place and hide it on themselves?
It's the worst.
Do it all the time.
Never put it in.
And then I just say that again, Louise.
Never put things in a safe place. You'll never find it.
It's so true. The amount of stuff, even art supplies that I hide on myself, it's ridiculous. And as you can see, I probably won't soften it off there, but I'm softening it off on multiple sides. And in my mind, I'm kind of messing it up a little bit. And while it's still wet, I'm going to put a little bit of this in here. And then a lot of watercolor artists just do a one layer, let it dry. I'm impatient and I like to get as much in on that first layer as possible and kind of create lots of cool energy. So I will then bring in, say, another color and I'll plop it down with the good old plop and I'll pull it. And I'm not outlining my whole piece. And I'm going in with, as you can see, there's actually nothing on this brush. It's clean and it's damp. And I'm going in and I'm pulling it. And I'm not going in and pulling everything. I'm just kissing those edges. And see the way that was a big area and a lot of it spread pretty fast. It's gone quite light. I'm usually cheeky and I go straight back in and I just plop a tiny bit more down. And when you first do this, if you do this technique, it'll freak you out and it'll feel totally uncomfortable. And it's totally fine. Honestly, it does feel like that for a little bit. And then when you find your groove with something like this, you might tweak it a little bit. It just feels amazing. And your artwork has this energy that comes out straight away rather than just working in single layers and waiting for it to dry and then adding your next color and that. It's a fun way to paint. And if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter at all. So I might bring a little bit of this down here. I'm bringing some more with my smaller brush. If you're doing a bigger painting, you would always go in with a bigger brush. And I'm putting some paint in there. I've plopped it down. And I'm going to get my clean, damp brush. And I'm going to pull it. And because I feel like it's getting boring over on this side, and it's still wet, I can be cheeky and pop a little bit of watercolor down there as well. Oh, I think it's looking pretty already. So I'm going to get a little bit of blue because I'm not very good at painting monotone, like monochrome stuff. If you've seen my artwork, you know that I'm not great at monochrome. And the rainbow always comes out whether I want it to or not. And I'm just pulling it a little bit. And because I've got blue over here, I love putting in the same color in multiple places throughout an art piece. It's a design rule. Put it in either 3 places or 5 places if you can. I'm going to bring it over there. I'm just plopping it down. I've got a lot of pigment and it takes a while to get that balance between. We go through it a lot, but you practice that balance between pigment and water and you'll find your groove after playing with it for a little while. And I might bring some more of that yellow through here because it's now getting quite rainbow colored. And I might just fix up a few little spots here. And I'm going to pull it with a clean damp brush. And then I'm going to be cheeky and I'm going to do this. And if you don't like doing splotches with your artwork, pull back on this. But I love doing it because it also hides all my mistakes. And it gives a kind of a sporadic kind of delight to your art piece that you might not have been able to create on your own if you were trying to like exactly get it, because watercolors, they're minerals, they're from the earth, they've got a mind of their own. Some are heavier and lighter, and when you bring in splotches of water, or even salt is a great thing, or you drip a different color into a color you didn't mean to, sometimes magic happens. And it's amazing what happens even when it's dried and you come back to it and you can see how beautiful the paints are themselves. See, it's just pretty. And that's just one layer. So when that's dried, you would go back in and you would darken some of those corners, but you would darken them with the colors that are already there. I say that because with watercolors, they're transparent again. So if you're going to put a blue on top of a purple on top of a yellow, you're going to get mud. So you would really want to just accentuate what's already there in your first layer. I'm going to show you again with this one here. I'll just bring up a little bit of this pencil work. There we go. And I might choose a different color scheme this time. How about we'll try purple. I usually bring it from my palette, my paint palette, over to here. And this is a little bit darker, and I'm going to plop it down. And with the plop and pull, you only do small sections at a time. If you paint a big section, it's going to dry too fast for you to move the energy of the paint around. And then you get these really harsh lines that actually aren't that nice looking. So always start smaller. There we go. I might do something like that. So I want these diamonds now. They're quite pretty. And I'm just going to move the paint around a little bit. Might get a bit of blue, a bit of darkness. It's always lovely having the darkness next to the light. It brings a lot of contrast. And as you can see, as you're painting, you lose a lot of, in this style of painting, you lose a lot of the detail that you would have drawn in at first, and that's okay. You kind of need to loosen up, lose all the detail, go crazy, and then at the end you can bring that detail back in. And then what it does, it gives you these pockets of abstract, like sweet, dreamy abstractness. Then you've got the realism that can come in, and you were talking about the landscapes and the horses earlier on, and you can have your background being beautiful and moody and dreamscape, and your horses coming into more detail. It's a great way to actually capture all those feelings in an art piece with using watercolors. Drip a little bit more in. And see the way it's getting completely messy there? Again, that's all right, because when you come in later on, you can bring in another layer to tighten that up a bit. Or when it's drying, you can add a little bit of salt in if you want, which moves the pigment around quite a bit. And if you have made a really big boo-boo, you can always pull up some of your water with a dry paintbrush or a tissue.
Yeah, those splotches give it some movement or energy or something. Yeah.
They do, don't they? Yeah. Gotta love a good splotchy, bit of splotchiness. I remember thinking I would create the artwork, and then I was like, oh, it's like their aura, like the energy of the theme that I was painting, like birds. It was the aura connecting with the background and connecting with the trees, and I really loved that. I don't know, that made me feel really happy that I'd gotten to that place where I could see that in my own artwork, because it's hard to see certain leaps in your own artwork because you're so close to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice when you feel like you finally had a little bit of a breakthrough. I might be cheeky. I might add a little bit of yellow splotches in there. Just a little. And see what happens. Beautiful. And I'll quickly have a go of this one as well. What color scheme do you think we should do? What am I missing?
Maybe more of the blues.
Yeah, maybe I'll add some grays in because I actually use a lot of darks in my paintings as well, but it never looks like in my artwork. As you can see, I've got so much artwork. I'll show you some. Oh, okay. So I'll show you some artwork. So with this sort of work, I use, and no one would spot it, but I use so much of this color here and this color here, and they're two really dark colors. And I go through heaps of it, but yet my colors are so bright. So it's quite weird that I'm always filling up those tubes of paint. It surprises me that I'm like, it would always be like neon pink or something like that I would think that I'm going to fill up. But it's not always. I'm actually using a lot of these colors, these dark grays and browns and midnighty colors to then make the other colors pop and to bring the shadow. So some parts go back and some parts come forward. It's really cool. And it's surprising me, like when you on your art journey, it'll surprise you what your color scheme is and that things just seem to automatically happen that you haven't even thought about that keep coming out in your artwork, like symbolism. You'll find that there's certain symbols that will come out in your artwork that maybe were hidden or you don't know where they come from straight away. And it's kind of beautiful to see that happening in your work and why you are, and then understanding why you are, say, connect to dragonflies or what it is about heart-shaped leaves and maybe it was a connection with your grandmother when you were younger or a certain, or if you love storms and you love bringing that into your background. It's really interesting to see how your art develops a lot because of the life you've lived and where you live and the journey you're on. So you can just go in with your black and whites even if you want to practice it. Has anyone tried the plop and pull yet from another class of mine? Has it been successful? It's a fun technique to try.
Yeah, I've tried it on my own. I don't have a systematic way of painting really, but I have done this.
And then I think once it's like you just said, Louise, once you are then painting for a little while, it almost doesn't feel like a system at all because it's just your natural progression of painting. And it's like walking and breathing. It just becomes a bit more, what's the word for it? Natural, I guess.
Intuitive, yes, yeah.
That's the exact word that I was after, but my brain couldn't think of it. And see me, I just can't help adding in like some crazy colors. Oi, sorry, it's my puppy. Patches. I'll let her out. Actually, go back somewhere else. Go on, go. Okay, I'm back. Sometimes she likes to bark at the wind even.
Oh, whoever is behind iPhone commented, I have with your butterfly. I really enjoyed it. So she tried.
Ah, nice. Oh, I'm glad it seems like it's a fun way to paint for people, and it just allows people to loosen up a bit. But of course, again, at the beginning, it can be frustrating getting it right. It does feel alien at first because watercolors can feel like that. But if you stick with it and try to just keep loose and be okay with painting lots of crappy paintings as well, because that's part of the journey, then you just keep getting better and better. But if you give up on your first or second crappy painting, well, then you never give yourself a chance to realize how far you can go with art. Yeah, and I love that. I think if you're happy to, I'm just going to bring this up. If you're happy with bad artwork as well as good artwork, that's part of the journey. It isn't all good artwork. It's the same with learning anything. It just takes time. It takes giving it a go. And it also takes making a hell of a lot of mistakes. I've made heaps in my art journey, and I'll keep making art mistakes and try and incorporate them into what I do. learn from them, help other people make a few less mistakes maybe. And yeah, I'm open with sharing that as well, because it is a bit of a journey, but it's nice to have a bit of art in your life, I think. Watercolor, mixed media, whatever it is, art's beautiful. And we see it in what we wear even, and how we decorate our spaces, and it's beautiful then to be able to just have fun and play with art as well. I love doing it. Yeah. So with this one here, it's probably a bit bright, but you can see the little,
Yeah.
yeah, you can see,
So
you
would
can
you
see the
use a hair dryer or something to dry the first layer? Or?
yeah. I'll show you what I use. My my thing likes to track me. It's really weird. There we go. So I don't know if you guys have one of these from Mixed Media Artwork. These are fantastic. And in Sydney, like in Australia, they're like $35. And you can get them on one of the online craft stores. And they are like 4 times hotter than a hairdryer. So just be really careful with them. They're a lot hotter, but they're fantastic. And I will sit there and do that, or I'll go and do something else. Or sometimes I've even been doing 2 or 3 paintings at a time. And especially if I've got client work on and I've got to get a series done for art licensing, I'm not usually working on one painting. I'm working on, as you can see, like I'll be working on a whole series of work at the same time. And especially when you're working on multiples and it's in a series, if you're working on them at the same time, they all have that same essence together, because as we paint and learn and grow, you know, our art style changes and evolves, and that's totally natural and fine. But when you're doing a bulk of artwork together, it's really beautiful to see that pocket of time, and it's all running the same style and energy is all running through those artworks. So you can paint more than one painting at a time. But if you don't have one of these, I suggest this has been my best friend. It stops me from painting over a damp painting. I can just use this and it's dry in 5 minutes. Yeah, it's saved a lot of my paintings from being ruined, that's for sure. So I think in America, they're probably only about $20, maybe $25, and you can just get them online. These are like a American, it's an American craft gun.
Okay.
I love my art supplies from America. You guys have got some great stuff over there, over in America and Canada. Really, really cool. But I would just do that. And then I'm going to go in on a second layer and I'm going to darken some of those spaces. I'm going to build it up again. And then I don't even go on the third layer. But with my layers, I'm not covering everything that I've done before. I'm just accentuating, adding, deepening, things like that, adding a bit of energy or depth so that other parts can pop out and come forward. And then at the end, when it's completely 100% dry, I go in with what's called on our end, we have a Sharpie pen. It's basically just a black waterproof pen. So you can get one of them from any shop. And just go for something that's waterproof, because if you then paint back over it, you don't want it to, of course, go everywhere. And I will go in and I'll put a little bit of depth in where my pencil work was before, so that I'm getting some of that detail back again. This is a step that a lot of artists don't do. This is kind of like just my technique that I've built up over a few years. You can go in and do it with a pencil, a lead pencil if you like, or you don't have to do this step at all. It'll be completely up to you and your journey and what works for you, and you're going to tweak that along the way. But I love using a Sharpie pen just to get some of that detail, little bit of detail back in the corners and the edges and things like that, like where the shadows are, say, of here, and maybe some eye details if you're doing a portrait. But don't go overboard with it. It's really easy to go overboard and just start outlining everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I learned that at Disney. You actually don't do that, because it then flattens your painting. What you want to do is just give it depth and shadow, and bring forward a few of those little juicy details. And we go into that more over time. And I even do it kind of rough and scratchy, so that I'm not trying to get it perfect again. Because if I do half my painting perfect and then my 5-year-old comes in and knocks my hand or something like that, I get a mark up my page, I've then ruined my painting. So I don't do that. I just ruin it straight away, so that from then on I can just have fun painting and it's not precious. And when my kid does come in and do that, I can just keep going with my artwork and it's all right. Yeah. We have to adapt as females, don't we? And mums.
Sounds like a
I
good way of
have
going.
this great, well, I have this great painting that sells really, really well. And it's a dragonfly, and it's really beautiful. It's a dragonfly and a dandelion, and there's this big chunk of paint, like random paint in the bottom. And I remember watching someone trying to copy it, like copy it completely, and they were trying to get every spot in and everything. I'm like, oh my God, that must have taken you hours. Like, it's just, you're just doing, I'm doing this, and they'd be putting every spot in the same. But there's one spot at the bottom of the painting that he was getting in, and it's very elbow shaped, and it's because I stuck my elbow in my actual painting. And I'm like, and you're copying the elbow and everything. I was like, it must have taken so long. I'm like, just put some paint there and just do that. Because I'd made a big mistake. I just put some more drops on it, put some salt on it, and then it was fine. Like, I'm like, it's fine. It's, the whole thing's a mess anyway. And it's one of my paint pieces that sells really, really well. So who knew, hey?
Yeah. Had some
So
real
I
drama in it.
yeah.
So
Tamara
we're
just jumped
getting
on.
close to like we've gone
I
over
know.
an hour. So are there any?
We have. Oh, I do babble on, don't I?
Or anybody wants to ask anything before we
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
close?
No,
That's okay.
you explained everything really well.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely talk fast. Us Australians do talk fast, don't we? I know.
You pack a lot in. That's good.
We definitely do. I'm like, but at least it's been recorded, so people can go back and watch it on YouTube if they want to.
You can go on mastrius.com and find Sally's page. Just look under mentorship, and there's a search button. You can type in Sally, and you'll find more information. Also, what the registration is all about, and the exact dates and time and everything. So, well, thank you so much for this wonderful demo and presentation, Sally, and I can't wait to dive deeper into all these techniques.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun. Definitely.
Everyone.
It's and it's lovely to see you today, Lewis. And it's nice to see everyone else's faces as well, popping on and saying hello. So it's good. I sometimes get a bit lonely stuck in my studio, so it's nice to catch up with people online and in person, as we all do as artists, I think.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. I'll see you next week, and maybe some of you as well. So I hope
next week.
Some of you out there to give mentorship a try. And that's it for today. Goodbye.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you guys online in some form at some stage. And thank you for the catch up today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.